نصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. The 6th year after Hijrah continues, and the incident, the event of Umratul Hudaybiyah has just come to an end. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has declared from above the heavens, Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. Verily we have granted you an open victory. The word fatah in Arabic means to open. Iftah, open. Fatah also means to open the way to something. One is the opening of a door, for instance, and then one is removing something from the way so that this can open up an avenue, it can open up a channel, it can open up doors to many, many other things. Unlock, a different meaning for fatah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared that this was a victory, this was the opening. The same individuals that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam could not reach out to by means of his letters outside of Arabia because of the hostilities of the Arabs, the Quraysh. Now that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted the Muslims, the believers, an open victory, the doors to reaching out to others outside of Arabia had been opened. So this was the victory. Yes, indeed, we're about to see in a couple of years in the history, chronologically, but maybe a few months in our series, we will see a very great victory that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows upon the Muslims, and a huge defeat to the disbelievers, a crushing defeat to the disbelievers. But that is yet to happen, and Allah has already revealed the verse that we have granted you an open victory, an opening, an unlocking. To what? To inviting others towards Islam. That is the victory that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted the Muslims now. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was not able to. There were obstacles, there were hurdles in his way, preventing him from reaching out to others because of this because of this internal unrest. But now that Allah has made it easy for them as a result of Umratul Hudaybiyah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam will begin calling others towards Islam as well. Others meaning those outside of Arabia, those that are not the Quraysh, those that were not involved in going to war with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam all of these years. Instead, those outside, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam will begin inviting them towards Islam. So this takes place particularly in the 6th year after Hijrah as well, in the month of Dhul Hijjah. So the 6th year is now coming to an end. There's a small little bit of difference of opinion. Waqidi, a great historian in Islam, said that these events, the writing of the letters and dispatching them to the kings and the governors and others by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the Sahaba, this took place in the 6th year in the month of Dhul Hijjah. Other historians said, Muhaddithin as well, they said that these events, the dispatching of these letters by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they took place in the 7th year after Hijrah. Others said, Bayhaqi rahimahullah said, that the dispatching of letters took place after the battle of Mu'tah. Mu'tah is a very historic, a very, very great battle. We have yet to discuss it. Nevertheless, to reconcile between all of these differences is very simple. They all took place after Umratul Hudaybiyah. Whether it was immediately after it, or whether it was just a little while thereafter, regardless, they took place after Umratul Hudaybiyah, which we know for a fact, most probably, and it's almost unanimous, that it took place in the 6th year after Hijrah. So towards the end of the same year, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would now begin writing these letters. And before doing so, he would make mashura. He would consult with his companions, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'een, about this mission of reaching out to those from outside of the border. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam would mention to them that, O people, addressing the Sahaba, I have been commissioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as an embodiment of mercy to all of mankind. So therefore, this message that Allah has sent me into the world with, you people need to take this same message and convey it to the rest of the world. And Allah will, in return for you carrying out this mission, Allah will shower His mercy over you. And don't be like the Jews, don't be like the Christians. Don't fall into dispute like they did. They started to quarrel with one another. They started to fight with one another. Instead, you have to remain together. And what else did the Christians do when Rasulullah ﷺ referenced them not to be like them? When they were asked to partake by Isa alayhi salam, when they were asked to go on a journey that was nearby, they were all ready to do so. They were willing to accept that which was put before them. But when the same Christians were asked by Jesus, by Isa alayhi salam, to go on a journey far and long, they stuck to the ground. They would cling to the ground, and they wouldn't move, as if a very heavy burden or weight was held over them. Don't be like the Christians. In other words, regardless what demand the deen puts before you, you need to be ready to carry out this message, to convey this message to anywhere. Regardless which corner or nook of the world you may be asked to convey this message to, you need to be ready. Unlike the Christians who said, if it's nearby, we'll take care of it. If it's an easy job, it's ours. And if it's a difficult task, please don't bother us. Don't be like them. When Sahaba radiallahu anhum heard this, and this is not the first time, if we go back to Badr, in the battle of Badr, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked the Sahaba radiallahu anhum their opinions about what should be done. Whether regarding the war itself, regarding engaging in the war itself. And different opinions were given by the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam knew that as long as he was in Medina, as long as he was in Mecca, as long as he was in Madinatul Munawwara, the people of Medina, i.e. the Ansar, they were going to defend him, and they were going to take care of him, and they were going to protect him. He didn't know that whether or not this protection that they have promised would continue even after Rasulullah ﷺ left Medina, or did he leave the outskirts of Mecca. Nevertheless, he wanted this reassurance from them. So Sa'ad bin Mu'adh radiallahu anhu and a couple of others from amongst the Ansar, they stood up and they said, no, it was the people of Mecca. Rasulullah ﷺ knew that the people of Mecca would protect him as long as he was inside the city of Mecca. But if he were outside, he didn't know whether or not the protection guaranteed by them was still with him. Nevertheless, they promised Rasulullah ﷺ, we're not going to be like those before us. You ask us to jump into the water, we will dive, not a single one of us will remain behind. You ask us to carry out any order and execute, we will do to the fullest. So this isn't the first time that Rasulullah ﷺ is testing the Sahaba like this, or encouraging them not to be like those before them. Sahaba radiallahu anhum have again and again always proved to the Prophet ﷺ that they're a whole different breed. So Sahaba radiallahu anhum hear this encouragement from Rasulullah ﷺ, they readily agree. Regardless where you're going to send us to, whom you're going to send us to, it doesn't matter. Remember, they're not going to be sent to little laymen. They're not going to be sent to just any Christians or any people of any. They're being sent to the monarchs, to the kings, to the governors and rulers. Send us to anyone. Regardless who you send us to, we're ready. However, these letters that you will have written, these letters will not be accepted by them, let alone them even reading your letters, O Prophet of Allah. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum now give their opinion to the Prophet ﷺ regarding these letters, these epistles that are going to be written by, or have them written by Rasulullah ﷺ. They will not be accepted until and unless they don't find on there a seal. There has to be a mark, like we sign in today's day and age. Those letters need to have a seal, a stamp, something that proves that they're actually coming from you. Rasulullah ﷺ liked this opinion. He approved of it. And so what did Rasulullah ﷺ do as a result of this? He had a ring made. The seal was made, it was a spherical seal in the shape of a ring. Now the sphere, so the band on this ring was made of silver, and the seal on the ring as well was also made of silver. And for those of you who have seen it, you've definitely seen it. You can't go wrong. It was written on there, Muhammad Rasulullah. And in exactly in this order, in this ranking. Muhammad was at the top, at the very bottom, sorry. Rasul was in the middle, and at the very top of it was Allah. It's very famous. People have it hanging in their rooms or in their houses, and sometimes you find it in the masjid. But the ring is also a very famous one. So many different things. These things have actually been preserved. Nevertheless, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam liked this opinion that was given by the Sahaba. Said, okay, if these people really are not going to give it any consideration, these letters that we write to them and we have dispatched to them, then we're going to have to do what it takes. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had it made. This is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wore the ring. And of course, many people justify today wearing jewelry as if you want to wear jewelry to invite other people towards Islam, maybe, why not? But nevertheless, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has this ring made. And after it is made, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would then have this letter, which is the first one that he is going to have written and dispatched to the Emperor of Rome. Rome at that time is not a small place. Rome is not a small empire. Rome is one of the two superpowers of the then known world. And the first target, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, outside of Hijaz, outside of Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, is Rome. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have this letter documented, written up, and in it he would begin, Min Muhammad, Abdullahi wa Rasuluh, from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the slave and the messenger of Allah, ila Hiraqal Azim al-Rum, to Heraclius. In Arabic, Hiraqal. When we were kids, we used to say Hercules. I have no clue where that came from. It's actually Heraclius. This is the big guy. Hercules is still, they must have a cartoon of it or something. I'm not sure what it looks like now. But in our time, he was this big, strong, powerful, mighty man. That Herakl is this Herakl. So the great, the monarch, the king of Rome at the time, the title given to him is Herakl. Okay? This Herakl is the one that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to have this letter sent to, dispatched to. And in this letter, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam begins addressing him, Salamun ala man ittaba al-huda. Peace be upon the one who follows the guidance. Amma ba'd. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then says, okay, after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and after sending salutations upon himself sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam writes to him, فَإِنِّي أَدْعُوكَ بِدِعَايَةِ الْإِسْلَامِ. I'm writing to you to the call that is made in Islam. Aslim taslam. In a nutshell, the crux of every single letter. This series now, this episode 105 to 110, is all these letters. And with each letter, it's very interesting. What happens? How does the one receiving the letter receive the letter? How does he respond? How does he behave? All of this is going to come with it in detail. Who was sent by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to deliver the letter? This letter was sent by a Sahabi by the name of Dihya Kalbi. Dihya Kalbi is special for something else as well. What is it? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to receive wahi. Wahi was received by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at times through Jibreel alayhi salam, coming in the form of Jibreel alayhi salam. This happened a couple of times. Other times, through no means, just direct wahi, like the chiming, the buzzing of bees. Other times, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to him, Jibreel alayhi salam, disguised as a human being. That human being that Jibreel alayhi salam looked like when he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the form of that human, was this man, Dihya Kalbi radiyallahu anhu. So Dihya Kalbi was sent by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to take this letter to who? To Heraclius, Hercules. And in it, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells him, this is the crux. Aslim taslam. you become Muslim. Surrender yourself to Allah, you will be safe. And then Rasulullah ﷺ mentions a few other words. يُؤْتِكَ اللَّهُ أَجْرَكَ مَرَّتَيْنِ. If you were to do this, Hercules, if you accept Islam, surrender yourself to Allah, you will be successful, you will be safe. Allah will reward you twice. Once for believing in Christianity when Christianity was the divine religion, and now after having embraced Islam, Allah will bless you, Allah will reward you for Islam as well. So you'll be rewarded for Christianity when that was the religion, and now you'll be rewarded for Islam. فَإِن تَوَلَّيْتَ. And if you choose to deviate, if you choose to take the other route, then not only are you going to be responsible for your own destruction, you're responsible for the deviation of your citizenry as well, the people under you. All of the people that you have in this kingdom of yours, you are responsible, because those kings actually meant something to their people. Not like today. There is no concept of a king anymore, except for very few places in the world. Those kings were kings, so whatever they decided, whatever they ordered, that went with the rest of the people. So Rasulullah ﷺ tells him, you believe, all these others, Allah will give you the reward of them as well. You're responsible for them. But if you choose to deny, not to accept, to refuse, then you're responsible for everybody else under you as well. Your subjects, your subordinates. And then he reads to him the verse of the Holy Quran. Ya Ahl al-Kitab, O the people of the book, generally referring to the Jews and the Christians, and in this context, these Christians of Rome, Ta'alaw ila kalimat, come to a word between us, a mutual understanding. Allah na'buda illa Allah, that we're not going to worship anybody but Allah. Wala nushrika bihi shay'a, we're not going to associate or ascribe any partners unto Him. Wala yattakhidha ba'duna ba'dan arbaba min dunillah. And neither of us, not us the Muslims, not you the Christians, are going to take anybody as God except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَقُولُوا شَهَدُوا بِأَنَّا مُسْلِمُونَ. And if those people disbelieve, i.e. the Christians, then tell them that we are the Muslims. This is the message sent by the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam via Dihya Kalbi in the 6th year after Hijri to Hiraql, Azim al-Rum. So, when Dihya Kalbi, he leaves Medina Munawwara, and when he comes to Medina al-Munawwara, it was Medina. I said Makkah early on, it was Medina. Rasulullah was in Medina where he was afraid, he didn't know if the people of the Ansar were going to give him the assistance. Nevertheless, Dihya Kalbi radiallahu anhu leaves with this letter. And when he leaves, he comes to Rome, but when he gets to Rome, he actually meets with an individual from Busra. When he meets with this individual of Busra, he is very fortunate because it was him, that individual, through his auspices, through his help, support, he manages to get into the emperor's court. You don't just walk in there like it's your dad's house. You're going to you need some connection to be able to get inside. So he uses this connection. This connection in particular was the governor of Busra. The governor of Busra helped Dihya Kalbi radiallahu anhu get inside the court of the emperor Hiraql. And he has come to him by now, whether it's the end of the 6th year or the beginning of the 7th, when he comes to Rome, this is when at the same time Hiraql has just returned from Baytul Maqdis. And why had he returned from Baytul Maqdis? On a journey he had taken by foot. He had taken this journey to thank his divine for the fact that he had just been victorious over the Persians. The Persians, the Sassanid Empire, is the other superpower of the then known world. He had just defeated them. He's on his way back from Baytul Maqdis. He's coming to Rome by foot. This is Azim al-Rum. This is the emperor of Rome. He's coming back. In the meantime, Dihya Kalbi radiallahu anhu has come, and he's waiting for him inside of his court, or he's just about to enter inside of his court when he's already there. Dihya Kalbi radiallahu anhu, he comes inside. When he comes inside, just before he hands over this letter that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given to him, the contents of which we just read, just before he delivers this letter to him, he gives a little sermon in which he says to him, he says, you know that the one that has sent me, i.e. the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is far more superior than you. This is how he begins his address to arguably one of the most mighty, powerful people on earth at the time. The one that sent me to come to you is far more superior than you. And the one that dispatched him and commissioned him as a prophet is the most superior, Allah. He starts his address like this. He says, nevertheless, you listen to what I have to tell you, you listen with humility. And when I ask you a question, you answer with sincerity. A Sahabi, I mean, there's 214,000, 200,000 of them, and you've got one of the most powerful people on earth. And he's telling him, listen to me with humility. Don't become proud and arrogant. No. And when you answer, be sincere. Because if you don't, number one, if you're not going to listen with humility, then you're not going to understand exactly what it is that I've come to you with. And number two, if you don't answer the questions that I ask you, if you don't answer them with sincerity, then you're not going to be impartial. You're not going to be just. And that's not right. So, after he starts like this he's talking directly to Herakl. There's no intermediary. There's no interpreter. It's one-on-one. Herakl says, okay, go on. Go ahead. So I'm really sorry I'm going to have to do this, and I hate to do this myself, but I'm going to tell you 5-6 minutes in advance, there's going to be a cliffhanger. There's no way we're going to go through the whole story of this letter that is sent, and I'm really sorry, I apologize, but it happens every time. Anyways, he says, go on. So Dihya Kalbi radiallahu anhu says, do you know that Jesus, the son of Mary, used to worship God? He used to pray to Allah? So Herakl says, yes, no doubt, absolutely. Dihya Kalbi says, well, if that's the case, I invite you to the one that Jesus worshipped, to the one that Jesus bowed down to the one that created Jesus in the womb of his mother, and to the one who created all the heavens and the earth. I invite you towards him. And I invite you towards that prophet, the unlettered prophet, An-Nabiy al-Ummi, not the uneducated, the unlettered. He was not taught by any human being. Allah Ta'ala taught him directly himself. The one about whom the Prophet ﷺ, Musa ﷺ and Isa ﷺ gave us glad tidings. They told us about him and about his coming into this world. I invite you about him. I invite you towards him. He says, you do know that Musa a.s. and Isa a.s. gave us glad tidings regarding the unlettered prophet? He says, yes, I do know this. He says, in that case, if you accept whatever it is that I have to tell you and present to you now, Dihya Kalbi says to Herakl, then you will have attained success in this world as well as in the life hereafter. You will have the best of both worlds. But if you choose not to, then otherwise what will happen is that not only will you have a catastrophic destiny, fate, waiting for you in the life hereafter, you're doomed forever, but in this world as well you have partners. You will have partners. In other words, you will have people who will always be going against you neck to neck. They will always be against. They will always be competing with you. They will always be engaged in hostilities against you. So, nevertheless, know that there's only one Lord who crushes agnostics, anybody who doesn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's only one Lord who changes fortunes. So after Herakl, who is again one of the most powerful people on earth, he is the emperor of Rome, which is one of the superpowers, he takes this letter, and after taking this letter, he places it on his head, and then he places it on his eyes, and then he begins to kiss this letter. And then he opens it up. After opening it up, he peruses the letter. He reads it. And then he says, I will have to ponder over this matter, but I will get back to you tomorrow. And tomorrow for us is next Tuesday. I'm so sorry. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. I was supposed to be in the hospital checking myself. My blood pressure was 157. Average is 120. I don't know what happened. 157. It's supposed to be at 120. Oh, the other one was normal. It was like 78 or. Yeah, the low one. But the high one was too high. No, I was at home the whole day. My head was pounding. But anyways, alhamdulillah, I'm fine.